All right, here we are. Welcome everyone to our first event this year in Health Talk series. And I'm very happy to have Jani and Venla from MDS Finland with us as the main guests who have been invited by OuluHealth and who is the co-organizer of this specific Health Talks. And just very briefly, for those who don't know, Health Talks is event series focusing on the health and life sciences entrepreneurship, co-organized by pretty much all the health hubs in Finland and several institutions aiming to share relevant material with at least the Finnish audience, but everyone else who's joining us. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Minna.
Hello, everyone. A warm welcome also on my behalf. My apologies for not having the camera on as I'm facing some super severe technical problems with my new computer. I can either have a voice or a video, but not both of those at the same time. Well, that doesn't anyhow diminish the quality of the presentation you will hear today. So the topic today is the due diligence for medical devices. And as Rashad just mentioned, we have the privilege of having the MDS Finland representatives, Jani and Venla, today telling us more about this topic. So for the next 45 minutes, Jani and Venla will be sharing the stage, and I will be following up the chat discussion. So I hope that whatever kind of questions you have, you can either raise a hand or write the questions to the chat box that I will be following up. And then after the Jani's and Venla's presentation, we have time for Q&A. So with these words, Jani and Venla, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. And really, my name is Jani, and I'm the founder of MDS, and we have been working together with Venla for several years already. And MDS is a consulting company, and which is concentrating on various health and medtech services. And today our intention is to go through the main components of due diligence, and I think the target would be more like for small companies and startup companies, and something to take out from this, that what kind of due diligence, when the companies are facing the due diligence process, we try to give some advices on what to concentrate to, and then we take some practical kind of examples in the last part of it, or let's put it this way, that it's more practical examples that we go through there. And I think the Venla is going to start, and maybe Venla want to introduce herself as well.
Yes, so hello everyone, and welcome on my behalf too. So my name is Venla, and I work in marketing and sales and as a QA and RA consultant at MDS. And I am also a master's student in industrial engineering and management in University of Oulu. And I did my bachelor's thesis last year on this medical device due diligence. And my thesis also focused on smaller companies and startup companies, and kind of had this emphasis on the components of the medical device due diligence service. So that's my background. And Jani, would you like to introduce the company as you're the founder?
Yeah, I can take it shortly before we start. So we have been helping the manufacturer, distilleries and importers in various topics, as I mentioned, in project management, QA management, and different kind of regulatory services and regulatory topics. And we have been building up several QMS QMS systems and technical files. I think that roughly per year we have like 70 customers. And of course, we do the sales certificates globally. We help the companies with the clinical investigations. We are like full CRO company as well. And then we help with the due diligence as well. And we have customers like investment persons or investor persons or investment companies who we help with these topics. So that's how we got into the due diligence a little bit more deeply than we have thought. And the QMS is quality management system. So if there was some question on that. And my personal background is that I have been working with the medical device in big companies and in startup companies for 24 years. So that's my background. So now maybe if you, Venla, take the lead on the first part, and if you have some short questions, I think it would be good that people also can interrupt and we can shortly answer to the question if the answer is short, so that not all needs to be discussed in the afterwards Q&A part.
Yeah, Jani, we have the first question in the chat box. It says that what does the QMS stand for in this context?
It is a quality management system. So that's what it means. So it's the ISO 13485 that is typical for the medical device companies, or ISO 27001 or 9001 or 40001. So based on different quality management standard, we kind of generally discuss about QMS here.
Yes, so moving on, here are the objectives of this webinar. So we're going to explore some methods for evaluating market readiness of medical device companies and address some critical topics and considerations in the due diligence process. And then lastly, we have that practical example that was also mentioned before. And a quick introduction on why we need a due diligence process that is specifically tailored to medical device companies. So as we all probably know, the requirements and regulations for medical devices are very strict, and entering a market for the first time can be quite a challenging process. And so because of the complex regulatory environment, those traditional financial metrics may not provide a sufficiently comprehensive overview of the companies for informed decision making. So that is why we need a medical device due diligence and a tailored approach for that. That also considers the regulatory field of the industry. And let's look into both perspectives of this medical device due diligence from the point of view of medical device companies and investors. Of course, both gain an understanding of the current state of the business and a perspective on business risks and opportunities. But for medical device companies specifically, this due diligence serves as a tool for reducing legal and financial risks by assessing the state of regulatory compliance. And it can also help identify strengths and areas for improvement, and robustness of operations is also a significant gain here. And these aspects can help with gaining investor trust and increasing company value. And investors, on the other hand, gain insights on regulatory compliance and clinical evidence, which reduces uncertainties and can help in the risk mitigation process. And the profitability assessment is also more accurate with the medical device due diligence, since the time frame for device market acceptance can be evaluated in the process. And this due diligence also provides a competitive advantage where investors can select companies with more robust regulatory strategies and risk management practices. And all these factors can ensure the long-term viability of the investment. But how can we address the complex needs with the medical device due diligence process? So the key here is assessing the risks and challenges that are specific to the medical device or devices if the company has more than one. And the aspects that need to be evaluated before market access include, for example, the timelines, clinical evidence, regulatory requirements, market demand, competitor analysis, distribution channels, sales strategy, and overall costs. And then after the market access, the aspects subject to evaluation could include, for example, maintaining the ongoing regulatory compliance, post-market surveillance, competitive landscape changes, and potential adverse events, and maybe even recalls. And of course, these ongoing operational expenses, to name a few. And we will now be looking further into this before market access section, and then later Jani will explain what happens afterwards with that practical example. So the first thing we're going to look at is the intended use of the device. And a very fundamental consideration is that does the device truly solve an unmet medical need? And if not, is it significantly better than the current treatment methods? So are there cost savings or time savings, or is it just providing better treatment results? So that's important to consider. And we also need to evaluate how easy and fast it is to deploy in a healthcare setting where the medical professionals can be very busy and may not have a lot of time to practice the use of the device. So this is kind of from the usability point of view. And we can also investigate if the device could have multiple use cases, because this could change the business strategy to some point, or quite drastically even. And then the second theme is clinical evidence, and scientific data is the key here, and it is needed for the regulatory compliance and proof of concept of the device. And for the regulatory compliance check, we need to evaluate whether there is enough supporting evidence. And in proof of context, we need to evaluate if the data to check if the device fulfills its intended purpose. And team competencies are also important aspect here. We can focus on the technical and preclinical development expertise of the team and their networking, because networking can also help in identifying and finding sales channels. And we can also evaluate how well the team knows the regulatory pathway, how well it is under control, and if the company has enough resources to implement that regulatory pathway. And also we check if external consultants or vendors are identified or should be identified to help with the short-term business goals. And then we focus on the regulative strategy, which is maybe the heaviest theme of all these. And we should evaluate what the overall market access costs are and compare it to the income potential of the chosen market. And we need to find out which markets are worth entering and when, based on the income potential and how expensive the regulatory pathway is going to be. So if the high income level potential in the chosen market for this specific device is expected to be short, and the market access process is long and expensive, it is important to take into consideration that and maybe come up with some alternative strategies for sales. And also it is important to identify the steps in the regulatory pathway that could be delayed and take these risks into consideration in the regulative strategy as well. And then finally, we can focus on the overall risks and general risks that are considered in this medical device due diligence process. And here we have presented 4 risk areas that are the technical risk, market risk, resistance to change, and post-market risk. And the technical risk refers to the functionality of the device and the feasibility of the design. And if the device is in the product development stage, this feasibility aspect is very important to assess. And market risk includes also the regulative challenges and responsiveness of the market. And this links a little bit with what I just mentioned in the previous slide. And resistance to change, or sometimes it is called natural conservatism, is also a significant risk. And this means that medical professionals are always not the most enthusiastic about new solutions, and they may prefer the well-established and older practices because that's what they know best. And it might be difficult to sell a medical device for these doctors to use for this reason. And finally, we have the post-market surveillance risk, and that refers to the possibility of adverse effects and their financial impacts.
And of course, Venla, one thing is to add here is also the I would say that the competitors as well.
Yeah,
so if there are like a lot of competitive field, because it's not like once or twice that suddenly at the same time there are several companies pushing in the similar kind of devices in the market. So you should be also aware of those, that what your competitors are doing, and that's one of the risks that I can also see. It's part of the market risk as well.
Yes, that's a great addition to this slide. Thank you. But yes, now for the practical example.
Yeah, if you put the first slide in. So while we have been thinking about the best way to implement this due diligence and what of the major components that Venla was presenting there, and where they should be placed and where they should be presented, and we have heard that question like several times, and then we have been thinking that there is actually one document that can overcome or tackle most of these issues from different perspectives, and that's why I couldn't take like a company example here, because it's I don't want that any of you kind of identify our customer in that example, so that's why I'm taking it like a little bit more theoretically, but it's how we have done it, that most of these due diligence issues we have tackled in regulatory strategy plan, and it's nowadays actually mandatory according to the MDR that you have to build this strategy plan for yourself. But now what we have done basically is that we have tried to build that in a manner that most of these market and post-market and these kind of regulatory borderlines, we have collected them together in a way that this document would also show the kind of possibilities to grow in different market areas. So we're also thinking about this sales opportunity or market potential for these medical devices, and that's why we concentrate on this approach to kind of that or the takeout from this would be that if you think that how you should be like presenting preparing to your due diligence process, this is actually the answer, that you just build your regulatory strategy plan in the first hand in a form that it answered most of the questions. So that's how this is the takeout that is a one good hint for or at least for the smaller companies to concentrate with. So here's a typical content for the regulatory strategy plan, and this is just this is not including all the mandatory things that are coming from the MDR, but I'm concentrating more on what is important on due diligence wise here. So it has of course the device description, that what kind of device or system or devices you may have, and then the intended use, and then user needs of the device and the clinical claims, and then the qualification and classification, and probably becoming changes or designs that you are already aware of. And then you have the target markets there, and then kind of D&D activities that you are performing for your device in different market areas, because it's not necessary that in all market areas you have a similar kind of device. So you may want to adjust that. And then we have some strategic objectives as well, that where we see the biggest market potential for our device. So kind of discussion on that. And then of course just few examples on regulatory pathways. Of course you may have like tens of different kind of pathways in here listed, but as an example, I took the EU and US here. So because it's quite typical that for example in the class 2 medical device, especially in the softwares, it might be very hard to get into markets, or at least it may be long lasting evaluation process by the notified bodies. And the good option is always to take a look on the US FDA, because you might even end up to a class 2 exempt device class. So it means like really fast access in the markets before you do the EU. So just to give you an example on how you play with the game, and of course it's on due diligence wise it's important to show it in a paper in a black and white for the investors that what have you been thinking, and what are the real market potential for you, and how they can be benefiting on the sales wise and lifting up your valuation. And then of course when you have like you may have like different in different markets you may have a little bit adjusted intended use. So that's why you have to prepare also for the building up the clinical evidence for adjusting the supportive information for your device. And let's take a look on them a little bit more in details. So if we start with the intended use. If you think about the intended use as it is, or which is also including the intended user group, and that of course may be changing over the lifetime or lifespan of the medical device. And for example, I cannot say you examples, but there are a lot of, for example, in Finland we have a lot of examples that we have helped companies to go enter to the markets, and we have been able to put them in the market as a preventive device, which even may be like class 1 device, depending on the application. And then if you are able to do that it's first as a preventive device, then you can start building your storyline on evaluation purposes or evaluation growth purposes, so that you start preparing for lifting up the device for the class 2 diagnostic or therapeutic device. And that's kind of a very important thing to write down in your regulatory strategy plan, because that's definitely is your market potential there, and how you have been preparing to that kind of a route. So it is really essential to analyze these and bring these all these kind of possibilities into the regulatory strategy plan and integrate them there, even though you are not even thinking of doing that, but as a potential, it's very important to write that down. And of course, then like I mentioned already before, that it's very important to analyze the predicate devices from different sales regions. So take a look, even though you have been thinking of starting from the EU, take a look on the FDA and Australia and those kind of other countries specifically, so that there may be so much easier route and so much easier classification for your device in the technology that you are using, and then you have to be really open-minded that think about your technology first, and then think that where this technology is used in those other market areas, because it might actually open your like completely new chances to make the new sales opportunities there that you can then benefit in your regulatory strategy plan and kind of creating the valuation for the company. Next slide. And then about the target markets, to find out all possible internet uses that specific technology can be exploiting, and that's why you have to be like really carefully going through all these target markets that you are intending to sales. And I always think that this is the easiest. This is the most important thing, that the easiest access to market has to be identified, because then if you are, for example, startup company, then that's the fastest way to get money in to the company. And when you are doing this kind of exercises, that you kind of search the target markets and predicate devices in those markets, it may provide like extreme possibilities to start the sale really fast and with lower costs. Next slide. And about the sales pathways, it's essential to identify regulations and define the cost and timelines for market entry for each sales region. And we can take like examples from some class 2A devices, for example, that might be class 3 devices in the US. And if for example in the USA you have to go to the PMA route, it's like really expensive compared to EU markets. So that's why you have to do your homeworks very carefully in this for these market entries, so that you really understand what are the costs and try to find out the full cost of what kind of clinical trials I have to run, what kind of fees are required by the authorities in that market area. So it's very important to do this like carefully and trying to ask from the early on from these regulatory bodies that how the process goes and what are the actual timelines, not only the handling times, but what are the calendar times, and then try to calculate that what's the like full cost. And of course it's really important to find out the clinical evidence requirements as well, because the clinical trials are very expensive to run, especially if the number of the patients is very high for the internet use that you have selected. And so it's always that the internet use is connected to the clinical claims, and then the amount of patients that you need to do, and also for the risk classification of the device. So they are all connected. And the good thing is that this all can be discussed in one document, which is this regulatory strategy plan. And of course, in this RSP, which is the regulatory strategy plan, you should be listing all preferred routes to market as potential market accesses, so that you can show to possible investors who are performing the due diligence that what is really the market potential and the costs for that in here. And then about the clinical evidence. So try to list all the planned clinical activities. You may have like these preclinical trials, you may have like safety and efficacy clinical trials, and then you may have like post-market clinical trials ongoing in different markets, but try to identify them all per each sales region, and try to estimate the prices, because information can be found quite easily nowadays. It's just work that you have to do. You are collecting that information together, and of course, if you are planning to expand the internet use and the clinical claims of a device, then you have to prepare for building also the support from the clinical investigation, clinical data to support that expansion of the claims. So that's also a key thing to understand. That actually it may be, for the new devices especially, it may be a good thing in the beginning to kind of somehow limit the internet use for a little bit more specific purposes, because you may have a little bit easier entry to the markets in the beginning, and then later on like creating more clinical trials to get the support for the expansion of the internet uses also, and also thinking of that if your device is first like class 1 device, and then if you then want to go with the higher claims for a kind of therapeutic or diagnostic claims, then you should have to also prepare for these clinical trials. But of course, this kind of stage thinking that first you can enter with the lower like class, medical device class of the device. It's not possible for all the devices, but at least all should be aware that you may have some possibilities there, and that's something that everybody should be like evaluating these options.
Jani,
yes.
I will interrupt you for a moment. We have a few questions that we can go through in a Q&A session, but here is one saying that, can you show the regulatory strategy plan index page once more? Perfect. Thank you. This was just a question from one participant when I have an overview before we will go any further.
Yep. All right. So this is just, of course, a very shortened one in here, but it gives you the idea of how we have tackled this issue. That because it's so many different topics included in the due diligence part that I think this is a really good takeout. That if you just have this one document where you start putting everything together, and then the nice thing is that you anyway have to do this regulatory strategy plan according to the MDR. You have to have it, so it kind of combines what is already mandatory, so you don't need to like discover anything new, and so it's a good kind of tool for the company. So
yeah, and Jani, one more. How would you summarize what are the D&D? So what are the due diligence activities?
Well, it's quite well presented in the Venla's part here, but it's definitely those regulatory pathways, which at the same time means that you have to find the market potential, and then you also have to look for the team competencies, and then of course the capabilities and reliability and safety of that medical device. So I would summarize it like this way, but Venla maybe have a little bit more economical point of view on this. So if you, Venla, want to comment on that as well, if you have a different summary on that.
Well, yes, I had those 5 slides here. So these risks, regulative strategy, team competencies, clinical evidence, and intended use. So I think those are the areas that need to be evaluated. And these were actually the results of my thesis as well. So I found these areas are those that need to be evaluated in the due diligence. So that's my short answer. But yes, where were we in was it the clinical evidence slide or the next one?
No, it must be this one.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the clinical evidence, then because they are all connected to the intended use and then also for the intended uses of different market areas, then it's also good to remember that these clinical activities and timelines, they are also connected to the clinical evaluation plan and clinical evaluation report documentation. So if you're planning to use them in your company valuation purposes by extending the intended uses, then you also have to be thinking them through these 2 documents as well, because you always have to be analyzing that how much background support information I already have for the possible predicate devices and for the kind of the support for the intended uses from the predicate devices. So you have to do the literature search and literature analysis as well. So and not all can be like analyzed here in the regulatory strategy plan, but then as a summary you can use those documents and referencing them to here as well. And of course, if you're talking about the clinical evidence and clinical trials, then of course the cost and timelines are also one of those key factors that you should be like discussing here in the regulatory strategy plan if you are going to use it for the valuation purposes of the company, which we definitely prefer because it seems to be like working quite nicely while kind of expanding that a little bit, as we suggest here. And this is actually my part as well. So now we can start discussing about different topics or ideas and questions that this may raise.
Thank you, Jani and Venla. Now, anyone can now open a mic and ask questions. And meanwhile, you're still perhaps thinking of what to ask. I will read what we have here in the chat box. So we have here one that is more as a comment rather than a question, but perhaps you can elaborate on the topic a bit. I would like to highlight the management commitment to the company regulatory strategy and with the support and engagement to have the plan with action in place and train the team with good understanding of each of own role and action from it. So, Jani, perhaps with your vast knowledge, know-how, and experience, do you fully agree that it's that for the sake of the success of the company to go through all of these phases, that the management commitment is the crucial key forward?
It is, and definitely on a commitment-wise. And also what I've seen often is that people or companies, they have not really collected this information that we were discussing here, for example, and that it may be partly collected in the kind of in different kind of investor presentations, but it's not actually it's not really a put into action through the company's own documentation. So that is exactly the thing. How do I understand what the comment here is? I fully understand it and fully agree with it, and I see it very often that it's actually not put into force. So it's somewhere in the investment like presentation, but nowhere else basically.
Thank you. So we have here a few others, and this is a follow-up question to these due diligence activities. So the follow-up question to that is that what about the references and appendices, what to include there?
If you talk about the RSP, then definitely the references should be to the own internal documentation, like this clinical evaluation documentation set. They has to be referenced, but as well as all kinds of references to regulatory bodies in different market areas. They kind of communications and also the guidelines as well. But it may be tricky because in for example, if the company has like breakthrough device designation for the FDA, for example, they may have a lot of communication somehow internally, but that should be somehow a constructed in a form that you can reference it into RSP and then use that as a real reference. So trying to build up on database on all kinds of communication as well, so that nothing is lost and everything is connected to this main document.
Thank you. The next question, is the predictive device logic universal to all markets?
Definitely not. Definitely not, because sometimes, yeah, that's actually I've never been thinking about that way, but it's definitely sometimes it can be the technology that you are using, and you might even you might not even want to go there to those internet uses, but you may use that as lifting up your valuation of the market potential of your device in just for the documentation purposes. You may want to show that to investors that there is this kind of potential, even though you have been strategically thinking that you are not going there, but there's an option for that. So it's definitely sometimes the predicate device could be really the technology, but then it could be just the internet use, even though the technology is different. So it a bit varies in here.
Thank you. The next question is that for a semiconductor sensor product with viable use cases in medical applications, then in parentheses, further explanation, sensor to be integrated into end products by our customers. So how do we address this type of regulatory strategy plan? Is this relevant to us, and how in that case? So Mikael,
Yeah.
as you pose the question, so you may also open up the mic and have a discussion with Jani. So yeah.
Absolutely, more than happy to.
Yeah, Mikael, this is a interesting question as well, because I would showcase it in a manner that I would like somehow try to build up the view on these possible options that your customer may bring to your as an end customer to your devices. So I would try to somehow explain that market and open up that market and what are the market potential, and then making a summary out of that what are the key factors of your device output that allows these companies to use your device. So it's this one is definitely not straightforward, but I would definitely like build a view on what is possible and what are the key factors of your own device that are allowing it to do so.
Yeah, I think my view of this as well is that yes, if we can claim a certain performance and sort of underscore that with a sort of standardized quality assurance system like ISO 9000 and or whatnot, then that should be basically enough. But then our customers are the ones that are actually claiming these medical device approvals and so on. So that's my view on this as well. But this is something I'd like the opportunity to maybe to discuss with you in a little bit more detail if possible. Yes.
Yeah, and then of course you also have this option that you should be thinking even more wider, so that even outside the medical device companies, so that also to the other field, if that opens like even bigger chance to bigger market potential for the investors. So I think these kind of cases, I would also kind of open these opportunities, even though they would not be strategically under your scope at the moment, but just for the valuation purposes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have one hand up here, Dubravka. I'm sorry, my mispronunciation.
Oh, that's very correct. Thank you very much. One thing, Jani, you were talking about the clinical trials requirements and clinical evidence collection. So now that's a very tricky line. For example, we are developing class 3 device, which is a neuromodulation device. So now there is always kind of a set of clinical evidence collection for investors. And then it might be a different clinical evidence data collection for regulators. Now, what is the best way from your practice experience to collect this data? I'm hinting here about, there's always questions about a reuse of the data. Can you use certain data from certain processes later on? And what is the best strategy, to collect the data for evidence?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're talking about. So you have like, of course, the smallest clinical trials are the ones that you fulfill the regulatory bodies like requirement for the CE labeling. So let's call it like regulatory study. But then you have this like some investor are requesting the companies do the more like marketing studies. So which have a like way much higher amount of patients, for example, and they may have a more kind of health technology assessment type of a output, but definitely if you are already aware that what kind of I would first concentrate on the mandatory ones for thinking of what's required for that market accesses. But then if you are already a little bit on further and you are able to start thinking about this market studies, then definitely they should be there as well. But not a lot of the companies are in the if you're talking about the startup companies, for example, who typically have existed already like 5 to 7 years before they can do the market access studies. So thinking in loud at the same time. So it if you are able to do that and think about those HTAs, and of course you should be including those as well, because they are very important definitely for the investors, because they are looking for the next step of the expansion in that market. But that can also be very market specifically that what they are. So I think that they should be there definitely. And
yeah. I have a sub question if time allows, just fast one. So this is all connected basically also to classification of the device. Now you were saying about the tricks, how to, kind of go through like a kind of range of classifications when you start from class 1, class 2. I mean, in my view, we have a problem with our device because all neuromodulation in EU from December 2022 was actually reclassified as a class 3. So now, are there any tricks to somehow circumvent this class 3 initial classification and somehow, kind of go lower, easier, and then classify it as a class 3?
Well, I know the neuromodulation myself very, very well. I've been established one company in that field in the past, so that I know quite well. So it's case by case. It needs a definitely a quite thorough review on the technology in itself, and if it's implantable, and then if it's implantable, is it like through the skin or what is it? So that needs to be evaluated very carefully before I can comment on that. But most likely, it's very hard to get that out of the class 3. My gut feeling is that, but of course, everything has to be like evaluated very carefully first. And if we can always, typically we find some options for those, but of course the class 3 as a starting point is quite hard to push down, because then we already know that by the application, it's already in that risk level that it's hard to push down, like the heart implants or different kind of implants. You cannot just push them to A, for example.
Yeah, I mean, the neuromodulation class 3 is really tricky, basically, and it's very questionable because, I mean, the main point in neuromodulation classification as 3 is the risk associated with a lack of knowledge of long-term developmental effects of neuromodulation. So,
yep.
So it's, like if you don't have the reports in historical data that show that it is actually, risky, so then I don't see the reason why it should be immediately classified as class 3. But I mean, this is just my logic. Trying to find exactly what you were saying, the way, the catch, but very hard, yes.
Yeah, and it's also in FDA the up classification of CES devices, for example. That's the same happened already in the US for these neuromodulation purposes, but there are a little bit more options for go around it. And it's an interesting field, and I also feel that it's unnecessarily high when they are up classified to class 3. So it's I don't feel that that's that dangerous. So maybe it must be a lack of information there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you for the lovely discussion. We still have some good 6 minutes to go. Is there any further questions?
Yes, I have a question. This is Mikael.
Yes.
How do I reach you guys?
Just go to MDS Finland webpage and call. That's the easiest way. I can actually put my phone number to the chat as well if you want to call and
Perfect. Thank you, Jani. That is a very good one. So now everyone, you can find Jani's phone number as well as email address in the chat box for any further questions and more specifically towards your company's needs and requests, what kind of questions you have. So from the bottom of my heart, Jani and Venla, I want to thank you for sharing your vast knowledge and know-how. This has been the first webinar for months that I have been participating in that has had this lively discussion, because very often the number of questions are super limited. So I hope that you all got new information and new thoughts to think about from your company perspective. And then as Rashad was sharing in the very beginning, this webinar has been recorded and the recording will be available. So whenever you feel like, oh, that it would be a good idea to go once again through what was said and told, you may go through or have a look on the recording. And once again, my apologies with working with my new computer, that I can neither only have voice or then the video connection. So I couldn't have both on today, but it's not of importance to see my face anyway as part of this presentation. So Rashad, do you have any closing words or on my behalf?
Just that I want to thank our speakers as well. Indeed, thank you for presentation, for informative information that you've shared and answering all the questions. And the recording will be on our YouTube channel. You'll receive a link to it in a week or so time. And yeah, and just we'll have some more health talks soon in probably end of May and June. You'll hear about those as well if you've subscribed to that. And otherwise, I'd just like to thank everyone, and that's about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and have a nice day.
Thanks to participants.
Thank you all the guys for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.